Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout the course of their business and share them with us so that we can learn as well. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method, book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. But on today's call, our special guest is George Staruch. He's the owner of Profitability Partners, Drainiology, Precision Veterinary, where they provide PE-level fractional CFO services, also sewer pipelining, and then veterinary care. So, George, it's great having you on the show. And I want to start off by asking a question that I always love starting with, and that is this. If you were somehow to have a time machine to go back when you started your very first business, what's the number one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. All right. I think I've got a few pieces I'd probably run through on that one. But the first one very much being that no matter whether you get things right or not, it's always a patience exercise. Like a lot of times the correct answer is just suck it up and deal with it for a couple of years. Even if you're moving in exactly the right direction, it's going to take time for it to line up. And during that time, it's always going to suck. The other one would be start off with relationships every single time. So rather than like trying to build brand marketing or anything else from scratch, start off leaning heavily on figuring out some way to be beneficial to other people who can in turn grow the business for you. So basically always start off with like larger scale business marketing or something where you're providing value to someone else. And the two things there, I think, just kind of jumpstart it and then, stave off some of the existential dread during the startup process.
Yeah. Both, I think, very good piece of advice. When you talk about that patience bit, I think that one, it's very true, but whether you're just starting or whether you've been in business for a long time, there's always new things, new initiatives that you're starting. And I think sometimes people forget you have to just suck it up, as you said, to go through that process, learn that. So, what are some things that you learned to be able to deal with the time involved that's needed to grow a business? Because that's what I hear a lot. What you're saying is like, yeah, it takes time. You're gonna have to just go through it. What have you learned to mentally to go through that without it stressing you out or thinking, oh, this isn't moving fast enough? Those sorts of
Sure.
thoughts.
Yeah. So I mean, like it kind of naturally becomes less stressful after like the second or third repetition because you start to see certain patterns coming in that are like generally hallmarks to you that things are moving in the right direction. It's the first few times where you're working on something and it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. And having not done it before, you have nothing to key into to say, yes, this is actually productive. I'm actually making progress in some way, shape, or form. Something like I KPIs are phenomenal for this. Like pick a series of metrics that you keep track of that are not just strictly how much money am I making and keep tabs on those. And those are things that like actually correlate back to directly leading performative indicators, essentially. So it's like the funding company. Drainiology is growing and growing at almost the exact pace that we projected. It's still frustrating, infuriating, and nerve-wracking to watch it happen because on any given day, it feels chaotic. It feels like we're moving backwards. And half the time, like we'll lose money on a new job and not have to go, all right, what happened? Well, like, why did this go wrong? Why did things take longer? Why did we wind up with more raw material cost? What can we learn from this to keep it from happening? But if I track the KPIs we're going at, the average time per foot that they get done on the drain lining, the average number of dollars per day, the average number of people that need to get involved in each process, like each thing is getting slightly smoother as they go. And so having like smaller goals to keep track of just makes it significantly less stressful to watch.
Yeah, I love that. So here's the big thing I took away from this, and I think I'm always amazed how many established businesses don't do this. They don't track their numbers.
Correct.
They don't track these metrics around what they're looking for. What would be obviously I know your advice would be just do it, but what are some of the key things that you've learned along the way to track? Because obviously you gave some examples there, but not
Sure.
everyone has a sewage type business. But what are some of the key
Hopefully.
things? Yeah, hopefully, yeah. What are some of those key things where people are like, yeah, you have to track this, because if you don't actually know what you're doing.
Sure. Um, I think a lot of people approach their financials and just data in general and like an abstract concept that they need to track it, but they don't know which one's what, why. And like that's sort of a diminutive perspective on it when people start getting moving that way because it's a story, right? So the gist of it is like, what is the goal of for the business? Like, what are you trying to accomplish with it? Okay, what needs to be true for it to do that, right? So like, if the goal is to double in size, what needs to be true in that case? Like, if I were to just stick with the storage company, for example, um, if I want to double in size, I need either twice as many people or people to be moving twice as fast. Okay, if I need people to be moving twice as fast, what takes time? Which things take more time that could take less time. So therefore, I want to track the metrics for how long those things are taking and figure out what the limit is for that. And then you get to a point where you're like, all right, this is as efficient as a crew can possibly get. If I want to double in size now, I will need to double the number of people. So like it's basically like you start tracking metrics very much directly correlated to whatever your actual goal in the business is. And then you just kind of reverse engineer backwards how far you need to be in each goal at each time in order to stay on schedule for what you're trying to get to. And like this little exercise is generally, I think, a good idea for anyone starting or even just scaling a business already at size, because it gives you concrete things that you can be doing on each given month that, again, make it less stressful to do it and B, make sure that you're actually making progress. You see a lot of companies that just kind of like flatline at a certain size and never scale beyond that. And I think, honestly, that exercise is probably the problem.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. 'Cause I think we look at normal stuff like CAC and EBITDA and just stuff like that, but what you've said is a lot more strategic approach
Right.
to it. Because numbers are numbers, but it's how you read them and what they actually mean, and um, the interpretation of those on the direction, which you've just said, which is absolutely phenomenal. One of the things I always love to ask as well, George, is we all go through challenges in business. And oftentimes we look at it and go, God, I'm the only one that's dealing with this. No one's ever dealt with this. It comes a personal thing. Maybe there's something wrong with me, whatever the case might be. So I love asking this because I like to normalize the whole challenge in business and realize that we're all in this together, working on it. So what's the number one challenge that you have faced in any of your businesses? You pick from the plethora that you have. And what's the lesson that you learned from that?
I think, like, honestly, the thing that has always been the most stressful for me has been the brand building, sales, and marketing at outset. So when you first start the company for the first like couple years, building that reputation out and figuring out how you're going to penetrate a new market or how you're going to convince people that you are worth talking to. And it's more just because like that activity set's unpleasant for me. Like, and I think that's normal for a lot of people. The idea of just reaching out and bothering new people about a thing and knowing that like at the end of it, like you want money from them or you want them to pay you for something. And you know that they probably don't want to be talking to you. Like that experience is always unpleasant. That part's always terrible. Even just building the brand where you're putting yourself or your image or something that you did out there for people to review. That part's always been tedious and scary. And that never ceases to be scary, I guess. Like that we're on lap number 5 or 6 now, and every single time this is the part that makes me uncomfortable. And the big lesson out of this is a lot of it has to do with patience. Like it's you find something to start off with. That's why I usually do like the larger business relationships as the first market that I target, because those people are significantly you feel better about approaching a business about a potential business relationship than you do approaching a random person. But they also like they tend to give you more of that reputational boost faster and the referral networks out of it. And then it just takes time. Like over 2 years, by the end of 2 years, things kind of seem to inverse if you do it right, where people are coming to you and the inbound marketing funnels are all working consistently. And at that point, it just becomes fun.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any advice that you have on how to get through that uncomfortableness? Because I know that it is a challenge for a lot of people to put themselves out there, have those conversations. And, you know, yeah, I love how open you were. It's like, yeah, I still find it challenging, but you do it. So what has caused you to, or what's helped you to be able to push through that uncomfortableness?
Well, I mean, the fear of blowing up the entire company certainly helps. Like if the
Yeah.
company collapses, that's a problem. So it has to be done. Um, but also, again, like I try to two things. One is good targeting so that the people that I'm talking to I know actually get benefit out of the thing that I want to give them. Like I am attempting to actually solve a problem for them. And I
Mm.
have figured out a way to do so such that they will realize more value than it will cost them, and I will get paid more than it costs me, and everyone wins and happy go lucky, yay. Um, and then the other part again is just building up relationships and referral networks as quickly as possible, building up other people who will advocate on your behalf.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. When you look at, and I know you have multiple businesses, but when you look over the next 2 to 3 years, what are your goals? What are you looking to achieve?
Sure. So I'm in the middle of opening a satellite vet clinic right now, and I want to see if I can get three more of those spun up in the next 18 months. The core clinic does rescues, shelters, adoptions, discounted care, affordable care for families in need. And we do probably 7,000 adoptions a year, but it's very focused on that. So we're working on building out a series of like general practice, full lifetime care clinics, just kind of for adopters once they've already adopted the pet to be able to keep coming back for the rest of their life. And I would like to spread that around the entire region. The plumbing company, I would like to get into municipal work because the margins on municipal work are phenomenal comparatively. So you jump from like a 7,000 to $30,000 job, and then commercial gets 70 to 150, and then municipal's like $5 million contract. So it'd be great to scale it up to that size. Basically, just needs to double a couple more times. Um, and then, yeah, basically, it's just scaling things up. I have a series of goals that over the next 3 to 5 years, I would like to hit, and I have all my little like interim KPIs that I'm keeping track of.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, for those of the people listening that want to learn more about one of the things that you do, what's the best place for them to contact you and reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, George Staruch. My last name is Staruch, means old geezer in Polish. You can email me, George at profitabilitypartners.com. We do fractional CFO work, basically help other people scale companies as well. Um, I'd say those are probably your two best choices. You can find me on other stuff too, but it's mostly just like pictures of me at the beach. So let's go with those.
All right. All right. Cool. Well, if you want to see George at the beach, go find the other ones. But if you want to actually, if you actually want to reach out to him business related, definitely check him out on the places he just said there. So, George, thanks so much for being on the show. It was great having you on. And as a reminder to everyone listening, the show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everyone hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.